Yeah, hello. Hey, I'm all excited. Coming up in the month of September, every year is a feast of the Lord, known by one of these three different names. The most common name is Rosh Hashanah, head of the year. Some people, though, call it Feast of Trumpets because it's about blowing trumpets or horns, even more specifically. And then actually, Yom Teruah, Day of Blast. See, we get that title in Numbers 29. God actually says, it will be a day to you for blowing horns, Yom Teruah. Amazing. All the other parts of the festival is that it is a Sabbath, a rest. You refrain from work, bring an offering to the temple, and each feast has something unique about the feast. And here, the one thing unique is it's a day for blowing the horns, the shofar. Amazing. And I used to love blowing the shofar. Did you hear I said used to? Sadly, I had to give it up, not just for Lent, but entirely for good. Many years back, celebrating a Passover Seder in Florida to gather everyone's attention and get things going. I blew the horn and I felt a tear go across my belly. Yep, it was a hernia required surgery. A year and a half or so later, felt all recovered. I was in Binghamton, New York. Huh? For those of you watching in Binghamton, I'm still around. And there I was to open the service and I blew the horn, and once again I felt that tear. I went back to the doctor. They checked. Sure enough, I had hernia number two. I've never called the Guinness Book of World Records, but I would not be surprised if I am the only person in the history of the planet Earth to get two hernias requiring surgery by blowing the shofar. Well, when I was notified of the second hernia, I thought of baseball. Three strikes and you're out. And I said, I don't know how that transfers over into the world of blowing shofars, but I'm not taking any chances. What would happen if I got a hernia for the third time? And so I officially resigned from blowing the shofar. I do miss it. It's such an important thing, but I still love hearing the sound of the shofar. Well, in Leviticus, God also says it is to be a reminder by blowing of horns, Zikron Teruah, have a holy convocation, a reminder. And so when you hear the sound of the shofar, you're supposed to remember something. It's to bring to your mind something. And this is definitely true. I found it to be true in my life in a way I never would have expected. As I mentioned years ago, I used to blow the shofar. And for those of you that have blown the shofar or been around people that do, you know that after a while, it develops a very nasty odor, and you got to do something about it. So I started investigating, searching on the internet, contacting friends who blew the horn, and found out that there were two things to do. One is cork the mouthpiece of the shofar with like a cork from a wine bottle, fill it with rocks that you would use for a fish tank. Don't take them out of your fish tank. Brand new rocks, clean. Fill it there like three-quarters of the way, and then stuff a towel, an old rag in the end, the other end of it, and then for like 30 minutes, just shake it back and forth and let those little rocks go back and scrape stuff off the inside of the shofar. That's one way. Number two is you leave the cork on the mouthpiece, stand it upright, and fill it with alcohol and let the alcohol kill the germs. I decided early on I needed to do both. And so I said, I don't know anything about liquor. I'm going to go to the liquor store, not just Walmart. Talk to a worker. I haven't drunk in years and really only, not much at all. So therefore, I needed some advice. And I said, but people talk. People talk. You know that sadly from your own experience. And if I got up and drove to a liquor store and started walking in the store, People would talk. If someone saw me there, ooh, what was Rabbi Ron doing going in a liquor store? If they saw me coming out, ooh, what was Rabbi Ron doing carrying a bottle of liquor from that liquor store? Oh, is he a drunk? What's the story? Well, I didn't want to take the chance because sadly, you all know people talk. And so I thought, this is what I'll do. I'll bring the shofar with me when I go to the liquor store, take it in the liquor store with me. This way, if anybody sees me, I'll have that shofar in my hands and hopefully could put a squash there into those stories that people would make up. As well, since I knew nothing much about liquor at all, I would be able to explain to the liquor store worker that, hey, I need to kill the germs. And what do you recommend? Well, so I bring the shofar, I drive to the liquor store on the west side of Binghamton and where I lived and get out of the car. And I used to, as I said, I love blowing the shofar. So as I'm walking from my car to the entrance of the liquor store, I'm blowing the shofar. Yes, I did. And listen, this is honest truth. I saw this lady off a little distance. Uh, and then she heard the sound of the shofar. She turned her eyes to where the sound was coming from, me. And then she ran. She didn't sprint like she was, running a race in high school, but she slowly ran to me, stopped in front of me, and she just looked at me and said, when is Rosh Hashanah? I need to remember to go to synagogue. A reminder by blowing of the horns. Most Jewish people either do not go to synagogue at all, or if they do, it's Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur in September or early October, and that's it. And so she heard the sound of the shofar, and it reminded her of being in synagogue for these holidays. And so she asked so that she could remember and make sure she went to synagogue. Next video, I'll talk more about things from the Bible that it reminds us, that the sound of the shofar will remind us of. But I'd like to ask you a question before we leave. What does the sound of the shofar remind you of? What memory does it bring back? What memory do you have when you hear the sound of the shofar? Listen, I'd love to know. It helped me to prepare for the next video. And so please, what I'd like to ask you to do is if you're watching this in a place where you can share comments below the video, share the comments. And if not, my email is ron@rabbiRonSpeaks.com. There's Rabbi Ron Speaks on the screen, ron@rabbiRonSpeaks.com. Tell me, what does the sound of the shofar remind you of? What memory does it bring back? I'd love to hear. I love Yom Teruah, the day of blast, and I hope you do too. And I look forward to hearing what the sound of the shofar reminds you of. Thank you.